Okay. So we'll recite the Mangala Charan, the sort of auspicious invocation prayer. So if anyone knows, they can join in. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Vena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamaya Dadati Swavarantiga Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Apta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Paramani Aditi Panchakalpa Krivyasta Kripa Sindhu Ganevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay.
So, before we begin, it's a very auspicious occasion for all of us, and we have His Grace Pancha Tattva Prabhu, and he will be taking us to Bhagavad Gita. We'll start from chapter 18, text 47. And brief introduction, although any Vaishnava's introduction can never be brief as such, but and we wholeheartedly welcome this opportunity actually to glorify a Vaishnava. That is real purification if we can glorify genuinely Vaishnavas. And Vaishnavas by their nature, they are so glorious that one would want to glorify them more and more. And here is Panchatattva Prabhu with us. He's the president of UK Glasgow Krishna Conscious Society, and he's completing his studies as well in his final year of his university education. And simultaneously, he's living in temple as his studies allows him, and practicing Krishna consciousness, doing many services in the temple, book distribution, and lots of other services. And yeah, we share, we stay in the same ashram, in the Brahmacharya ashram, and it's very lovely sharing the ashram together with Panchatattva Prabhu. And we've done book distribution together. It's very good with Harinam, Kirtan, very versatile. Harinam, Kirtan, book distribution, cooking, cleaning, any services as such, and very dedicated. One of the best things I like is he does not waste time. Very good with managing his time, and you would never find him sitting idle and just daydreaming, say. So always either studying or his university education, or studying Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, listening to classes and all. So yeah, we are very grateful to have you, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
It's a great privilege to be asked actually. I simply speak so I can get some purification and some blessings. One day follow in the footsteps of Ashish. But yeah, I was sort of thinking today that briefly do a sort of recap of the 18th chapter. Primarily more for myself. It's very nice being asked to sort of present or teach, because you actually have to try and develop some understanding, etc. And so what I love about when you revisit Shastra is trying to get more of an overview, because Krishna is, in many ways he's perfect, but he's also he's a master of conversation. And the way he structures Bhagavad Gita is so There's so much we can learn from it, actually. And once we understand the bigger structure, it can actually make us understand more what each verse has, where it's in relation. Otherwise, we can just learn verses, but they're sort of like little islands, you know, they're not connected to each other. Once we understand the bigger connection, it can really help. So I have some PowerPoint presentation, which is not very me, but I like it very much. Okay, so I'll just start this now. So hopefully everybody can see this. So chapter 18, the Sanskrit term for this chapter is the Moksha Upadesha Yoga, which Prabhupada translates as the perfection of renunciation. Conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. So we see that Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada writes, is finished within 17 chapters. But still, Krishna knows that the best way for us to properly appreciate a lesson is to summarize what's been said. And more than summarize, he actually gives us more nectar as well. So I was looking actually, Keshav, His Holiness Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, he gives a very nice book. Have you read Bhagavad Gita and Synonyms?
Yes, but not fully say, but yeah.
I like this book very much because he allows you to sort of get the whole chapter in a very sort of small condensed form, you know, the structure of it. So he has a nice nice synonyms for this chapter, if I can write here. Let's let me write. There we go. Okay, he says we've got to smile. I not to see. Bhagavad Gita makes both Krishna smile at the start and at the end Arjuna is smiling. So it's nice. So initially he gives a summary. The Bhagavad Gita, the first 6 chapters are dealing primarily with karma. Then the next 6 chapters are dealing with bhakti, and the final 3 chapters are dealing with jnana. So Krishna gives a summary of each of these. Then he talks about the modes of material nature. Please forgive my handwriting. Then there's the ideal worker, love of God, and finally the end result. So after giving a summary, then describes how every single action is governed by the modes of material nature, and then what we're going to focus on today is this middle section here, the ideal worker. How that even though everything is governed by the modes of material nature, and every reaction is bound up in this whole network of karma, etc., how we can actually work in such a way which doesn't bind us. So that's just a brief overview so we can get a sense of where we are. How do we... Okay, so does anyone here know how the 18th chapter starts? I'll give you a clue. It starts like most of the other chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna, he asks one question. It's a very, very nice question. It's very applicable. But it shows that Arjuna's been listening very well. So Arjuna, he asks, actually, is it this one? Well, Arjuna previously, the reason why I asked this question is because he's confused. Krishna's been talking about renunciation throughout the Bhagavad Gita, but he uses some different terms. We see in Yeah, this is in chapter 4. I should use this. I don't think so. Oh no, I've got it here. Okay, so we see in chapter 4, Krishna is talking about abandoning all attachment to the results of one's activities. And he uses Tyaktva, which is similar to Tyag, this renunciation. Whereas elsewhere, he uses the word sannyas to mean renunciation. And so Arjuna, he's a little bit confused about what's the difference between these two things. Because he's sort of thinking, okay, the Gita is sort of finished, we need to fight, but he wants some more nectar. We actually see the same as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that, the first canto of the Bhagavatam, we have Parikshit Maharaj, we had the whole sort of lead up, explaining how Shukadev Goswami is going to come there. And then Shukadev Goswami comes to explain the Bhagavatam, and Parikshit Maharaj asks some good questions, and he answers the questions, and then it's sort of finished within a couple of chapters. And Parikshit is thinking, well, I've got 7 days left to live. So then he asks more and more questions, and he gets more and more nectar coming out. And certainly this is another lesson we can learn in life. The better questions we ask, then the more nectar we get. If we don't have questions, it's either because we're not listening or we're not interested. Because if we don't understand, then we should have questions. If we do understand, then we should have even more questions. I know myself, when we're listening to class every morning in the temple, if I don't have any questions, it's probably because I was asleep. So he's wondering just about the difference between Tyaktva and sannyas. Do we have to give up the attachment of the activities themselves? So the 18th chapter starts with Arjuna asking, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation and of the renounced order of life. So renunciation is Tyag, and the renounced order of life is sannyas. So then Krishna explains, there's two things we can do. We can either stop the activity itself, or we can actually just give up the result of the activity. And in the end, he explains that in reality, we can't really give up activity itself. Elsewhere, he said in the Gita that we cannot even survive. This body cannot sustain itself without some work. In order to eat, there always has to be some activity. And so he specifies that there's some work like sacrifice, penance, etc., which we can never give up because they purify even very great souls. Again, here he's saying, it is indeed impossible for an embodied being to give up all activities, but he who renounces the fruits of action is called one who is truly renounced. So the action is there, but understanding the fruits do not belong to us. This is true renunciation. Here we see this is what it means to renounce the fruits. This made me laugh. But understanding that the action is there, but the fruit, it's nice. The fruit is a literal translation from Sanskrit. We had this phrase like phala, which means literally fruit and also reaction. We have the same meaning in English. So when there's some activity, then there's some fruit, some result from it. But the problem is thinking that we are somehow the one who deserves the result of the activity. Because unless we develop again, all these things that we're talking about here, Krishna has explained elsewhere in the Gita. And he explains it in chapter 2, Karma Nevar Ekariste. He explains it again in chapter 3 and chapter 5. So very much he's just re-emphasizing this result, that until we develop the mindset that ultimately, I'm not in control. I'm not the doer. These results aren't mine. Then we're just going to get more and more entangled. In the 12th verse, he states that unless we get free from this sort of motivation of false ego, etc., then we'll simply be bound up by these different reactions. There's the desirable, the undesirable, and the mixed. So we think we're the doer, so we can perform very nicely. We can do karma kanda, we can do sacrifice, we can give money to charities, or we can build roads, etc. And then we get some nice results. We go to the heavenly planets. But still, this is karmic. You're still going to have to take birth again. You do some nice things, then the problem is you have to come back to suffer or to get those results. You're sort of somehow bound down. It's like a deal. You have to take it. And the higher understanding is that we don't want to keep taking birth, because to Kalayama Shashvatam, that this material world is a place of suffering. Sometimes it may seem like it's slightly less suffering, but this is all relative. Suffering is so basically we have to imagine ourselves in the position of Arjuna. Arjuna is thinking, well, okay, I'm on this battlefield, right? Nowhere gets messier than a battlefield. We can think our own life is stressful or difficult, or that trying to deal with family relationships or trying to practice Krishna consciousness is difficult. But Arjuna is literally on a battlefield. People are flinging arrows. There's dead bodies everywhere. It's described as rivers of blood. Don't never quite know what to make of rivers of blood, but it's a very violent place. And Arjuna's being, he's getting the realization now that Krishna wants him to fight, to act in the world. But still he's sort of hesitating. How can I act without becoming so entangled, killing people, etc.? So then Krishna goes on to explain that basically he's giving a recap of jnana, of how we can use intelligence to become free from reactions of activity. And he's explaining that there's 5 different factors in any action. Because once jnana cannot take us directly to Krishna, but it can help us to understand how that we're not the doer. And once we develop this idea that we're not the doer, that we don't deserve, we're not desiring the fruits of our activities, then we can come to a higher platform. So there's 5. I'm not sure if I got them here actually. But these are the verses leading up to when he's going to describe the 5 actions, the 5 factors. It's very pertinent. It says, whatever right or wrong action a man performs by body, mind, or speech is caused by these 5 factors. So whatever we do is controlled by these different factors you're going to outline. So one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the 5 factors, is certainly not very intelligent and cannot see things as they are. Krishna speaking quite strongly here, because Arjuna is a Kshatriya, he's got some pride, he wants to be seen as intelligent and thoughtful. And he say, well, if you cannot see that these 5 factors are actually at play, not you, come on, man, you're not being so smart. The example is given of well, she's used in a different context, but there's still examples there, like a child tries to lift up some very heavy weight, but actually the parent is behind the child and is really lifting up the weight, but the child doesn't see this, so the child thinks it's doing it. And it's a little bit almost funny. The child thinks he's very, very strong, but really it's the parent behind. Similarly, if we think that we're the doer, that we're in control of the situation, then it's a little bit funny and sort of childlike. And then so the result of knowing these 5 factors, which we're going to explain in a wee sec, we should have covered already. One who's not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, does not kill, nor is he bound by his action. And so this is a great sort of source of comfort to Arjuna in one sense, that if you actually understand our true identity, how we're not the doers, then although you may be engaged in all sorts of activity, the reaction is not there. So the 5 factors, I wonder if I can ask people. Okay, I have some names here. I'm just going to ask if anyone can name me any of these 5 factors of activity. So Deepti, would you perhaps know any? This is around about, I think, verse 18 of the 18th chapter. Or we have Pip here. But can you think of any of the 5 factors of activity? Yeah, he's gone for the best one first. So we have. Oh no, it's doing funny things. I'm not so good at Sanskrit. So this is the, I guess we could say the super soul. The sanction of the Supreme Lord. Nothing happens without his sanction. Like me trying to write, this thing is not happening without his sanction. Okay, so that's 1 down. There's 4 to go. How about prakar? Can you think of any other factors for action?
Prakriti.
Prakriti. Very close. I guess we could sort of take that. That's not how the Sanskrit refers to it. But I'll give you that one. It's referred to in Sanskrit, we have adhishtanam, the place of action. More typically referring to the body itself, but again, sort of nature. Adhishtanam. So that's like, you know, we're driving in the car, and the car is the adhishtanam, the place of action. Now, who would be the one inside the car? The doer. The karta, the doer. Then the doer inside the car, he engages with the outside world through the steering wheel and the windscreen wipers, etc. So these are like the senses. Karanam, the senses, and finally, Ashish. We're going to pick on Ashish now. You think of the final factor?
The endeavor purpose, right? So it is endeavor.
Yeah. So it's Chesta, the endeavor. So Krishna said previously, one who, what was it he said? Yeah. Not one who doesn't consider the 5 factors is certainly not intelligent, cannot see things as they are. So we have to understand that these 5 factors are constant at play, no matter what we try and do. You know, we're good to make make a sandwich. Then every single one of these factors is actually at play. And then we have to understand, here the karta is translated as the doer. It's a very, very small doer. No? There's some impetus, Krishna's given us some free will, but how much can we actually do? You know, we think so many ways we're just bound up by the modes of material nature. So maybe, is this clear? I'm sorry, I'm maybe speaking a little bit fast, but are you with me so far? Please, if you've got any questions or anything, please just ask at any point. Any questions?
I don't know. It's sort of like an order that these are written in the stanzas and that's the flower. I think you said I went to the top one first.
Yeah, it's just, you put the top one to the end. And it's Adishtanam Tatakarta Karanam Chapratag Vivita Vividam. It's quite nice. The Sanskrit's quite nice. And then I have heard some people referring to this as a Pancha Tattva as well. It's quite nice. Okay, let's move on. We'll come back to that actually, a little bit too much. So then after Krishna explains the 5 factors of action, he goes on to explain the modes of material nature. And this takes quite a big section of the 18th chapter. I imagine you've been covering this for the last little while, but basically we see that he says here, there's no being existing either here among the demigods in the higher planetary systems which is freed from these modes born of material nature. So Krishna is sort of emphasizing to Arjuna how everything is pretty much already controlled. You get a particular nature. It's like Prabhupada says, it's like a disease. You know, once you get a disease, and it has to come to some fruition. So how we, our happiness, our determination, the work we do, all these, they have symptoms according to which mode they're in. And this picture, is so clear that these 3 personalities here, we've got Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. We're like puppets. They're completely directly controlling everything. So we have this conception that we're walking around free doing everything, but really it's not so much like that for most people. They're simply engaged in materialistic activities. So that's a brief overview of what Krishna's explained so far. I've got a question from people.
We're not from this moment.
I guess it says there's no being existing here on the higher planetary systems. You take someone like Prabhupada, where is Prabhupada? Prabhupada sees everywhere from Vrindavan. They've got this high vision. Krishna says, Vrindavanam prajaja paramekam nigachati, that he never takes a step outside of Vrindavan. And Krishna's associates are never actually going to leave Krishna, are they? And so it depends on our conscience. If we identify as being here, then for all intents and purposes we are here. But if we actually identify as being with Krishna because we are eternal servants of Krishna, when it's our true identity, then we're not so much contaminated. Okay. Yeah, so then this is sort of leading on to today's verses. This chapter is called the perfection of renunciation. It's a very, very nice phrase, because we've seen how every activity is, there's reaction, we get entangled. Either it's good or bad, but either way it's bad. you do some activity, then you receive some result. So Arjuna is questioning how it is that we can act properly in the renounced way. And so Krishna then goes on to explain Varnashram Dharma. These are just a couple of verses before the verses for today. So we have the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras. And he explains how, depending on the modes of material nature that we have acquired, then we act in different ways. It was very, very clear. I like drawing. The heads of society. Is that offensive? Is that supposed to be Christian? I don't know. No, it's Vishnu. It's okay. We have the Brahmin. The Brahmins are considered the head of society. They're working primarily in the mode of goodness. Then the Kshatriyas are the arms. They're working primarily in the mode of passion. Then the Vaishyas. I think it's a torso usually. Yeah, which are passion and ignorance, and the Sudras are the legs, which are primarily in the mode of ignorance. So it's a very, very nice analogy, because you take away any of those parts of the body, and the body is not very effective. Yeah, you got no legs, you can't walk, you can't do anything. You got no stomach, you can't eat, you can't have any energy. You got no arms. Yeah, you're completely helpless. You can be attacked by anything. But ultimately, the most important, if you've got no head, then even if you've got the others, then they're going to be completely disorganized. So we can see in our society that we're perhaps lacking a head, some direction. But this is why Bhagavad Gita is such an incredible scripture, and is, the scripture for this age, is because it gives us a process of, no matter where we are at. So Krishna describes these different natures. Then he goes on to describe how, by working in accordance with these natures, by performing a prescribed duty, then we can actually become purified. So see here, let me get rid of my man actually. Okay, so this is the verse previous to today's verse. So Krishna says, by worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. Which is very important, that we have to be engaged in activity. As we've seen previously, I think there's verse 11, Krishna is very clear that we cannot be engaged, we cannot exist in the world without being engaged in activity. And therefore the question may be raised in what activity should we be engaged in? So then Krishna is saying to perform our own work. And previously he's described what our own work is. But then it's not that just we perform our own work, he's also described in what should be the purpose of performing this work. It's very clear, by worshipping the Lord, then we can achieve perfection. So this is just a sort of brief overview of so far in the 18th chapter, just primarily for me to get my thoughts in order, because my head's a very cluttered place. Just before we move on to the verse, does anyone have anything they'd like to ask, or any comments they'd like to share? Okay. Okay, do you get people to read?
You read Sanskrit and yes, you can ask someone to read translation properly.
Okay, so this is text 47. Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradharmat Swanushtitat Swabhava Niyatam Karma Kurvan Apnoti Kilvisham. I don't think it's the synonyms.
No, just translation properly.
Maybe it's a bit small. So perhaps you can ask someone.
But have you got translations? Or
Yeah. Okay, perhaps Diksha, could you read translation in purport, please?
Ji Prabhuji. Yes. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties described according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions.
And you can also continue reading the purport. Thank you.
One's occupational duties prescribed in Bhagavad Gita, as already discussed in previous verses. The duties of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra are prescribed according to their particular modes of nature. One should not imitate another's duty. A man who is by nature attracted to the kind of work done by Shudras should not artificially claim to be a Brahmana, although he may have not been born into a Brahmana family. In this way, one should work according to his own nature. No work is abdominal if performed in the service of the Supreme Lord. The occupational duty of a Brahmana is certainly in the mode of goodness. But if a person is not by the nature in the mode of goodness, he should not imitate the occupational duty of Brahmana. For a Kshatriya or administrator, there are so many abominable things. A Kshatriya has to be willing to kill his enemies, and sometimes a Kshatriya has to tell lies for the sake of diplomacy. Such violence and duplicity accompany political affairs. But a Kshatriya is not supposed to give up his occupational duty and try to perform the duties of a Brahmana. One should act to satisfy the Supreme Lord. For example, Arjuna was a Kshatriya. He was hesitating to fight the other party. But if such fighting is performed for the sake of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there need be no fear of degradation. In the business field also, sometimes a merchant has to tell so many lies to make a profit. If he does not do so, there can be no profit. Sometimes a merchant says, "Oh, my dear customer, for you I am making no profit." But one should know that without profit, the merchant cannot exist. Therefore, it should be taken as a simple lie if a merchant says that he is not making a profit, but a merchant should not think that because he is engaged in an occupation in which the telling of lies is compulsory, he should give up his profession and pursue the profession of a Brahmana. That is not recommended. Whether one is a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Sudra doesn't matter. If he serves by his work the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Brahmanas who perform different types of sacrifice sometimes must kill animal because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. Similarly, if a Kshatriya engaged in his own occupation kills an enemy, there is no sin incurred. In the third chapter, these matters have been have been clearly and elaborately explained. Every man should work for the purpose of yajna, for a Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anything done for personal sense gratification is a cause of bondage. The conclusion is that everyone should be engaged according to the particular mode of nature he has acquired, and he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord.
Thank you very much, Diksha. This is actually, it's one of my favorite. Initially it was one of my favorite verses of the Bhagavad Gita, but I only knew it in isolation. Then when you see it as part of this bigger picture of where it's situated in the 18th chapter, it gives a slightly different understanding. You realize it's much more about Varnashram. Yeah, I think I might just highlight this one sentence here. This is I think perhaps one of these sutras, which is like the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Anything done for personal sense gratification is a cause of bondage. Very, very simple. But we do anything for our own, to satisfy our own senses, then simply we get more and more entangled in material nature. So Krishna is stating here, it is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly. So one's own occupation is meaning primarily, whether or not we're a Brahmin, Vaishya, Kshatriya, or Shudra, where we're situated in the Varnashram, Krishna has given this transcendental system, whereby we all have a particular mode of nature. Like everybody has a particular body. Some people's bodies are very, very fast. They can run, very athletic. Some people, they're strong. Some people, perhaps their body is better at dancing. So you see, we have a certain body. There's not much you can really do about it. But it's not like there's only one way to achieve success. No, it's not like that. Simply, you have to engage your body in the proper sense. Like before, we saw the picture where the Brahmins are the head, the Kshatriyas are the arms, the Vaishyas are the torso, and the Shudras are the legs. Now, every single part of that body is needed and is part of something greater. We have to, if the legs start trying to behave like arms, then you just have some confusion. And so we actually have to understand what it is that our nature is. But then moreover, we might think, okay, well, this is sort of my nature, but like, I'm not so good at being like that. Because we can see that there's, especially in the past, people who are sort of perfect at being Kshatriyas, like Arjuna, he's perfect Kshatriya. He's intelligent, he's noble, he's brave, he's the most incredible fighter. He's religious, he follows Dharma, he protects the vulnerable. If we are to analyze ourselves and think, well, maybe I'm like a Kshatriya, but like, are we like Arjuna? Are we really as good as Arjuna? Like, well, probably not. But this doesn't mean that we just reject our position, because in the material world, anything we do it's a little bit of a failure, really. We're just moving around the material energy. But the secret of Krishna consciousness is to do it to please Krishna. Because Bhagavad Gita, the whole way through the Bhagavad Gita, it's highlighting bhakti as the highest. Other things are mentioned, but Prabhupada, he sees bhakti throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Other people, they don't even see any bhakti in the Bhagavad Gita, because it's, their maya, their intelligence has been stolen by illusion. But really, bhakti is the whole way throughout the Bhagavad Gita. And so the only way the system works is if actually everything we do is done in service to Krishna. Because Krishna's recognizing that until we get to the platform where we're actually completely free from all these designations, completely pure devotees, then we have to engage according to our nature. And so we do it for him, even if it's imperfect. Furthermore, no matter what our duty is, whether we're, perhaps have some leadership role within society, perhaps we're in the government, or perhaps we're having to, work the land. See, we're here at a farm, and sometimes you go out and you work the land, and you're trying to be as friendly as possible to nature, but still, like, you've got a spade and you end up killing a worm. Like, it's actually impossible to get free from causing some sort of harm in the world. We see, for instance, like the Jains, they wear a special mask so they do not breathe in any flies, and they do not eat vegetables that be grown under the ground, and they sometimes have a special a soft brush to move insects out of the way. And this is all, it's very noble and is admirable, but ultimately you cannot stop yourself from harming it. Like, literally our whole body, like even inside our body, there's millions of bacteria which are part of the digestive process. These are all dying, taking birth, and the entire material world is a place of death. And so there's always some sin there, unless we engage it in the service of the Lord, and then it becomes purified. And by acting this way, we actually become free from these designations and become free from the modes of material nature. So, anything you'd like to add?
How can one understand what is his prescribed duty, or what is his nature say? Because there's so much of confusion, I think, am I Kshatriya? Or what should I be doing?
Yeah. Oftentimes we can just speak in theoreticals. When it comes to practicality, we see currently, as we progress, then things become somewhat degraded a little bit. It's not so clear as what our varna is, but still there's some tendency, is there? And this will be outlined because this process of our ashram dharma is a process of purification Krishna gives, and ideally it's for everyone in the society, but particularly for devotees it's more potent because we're engaging in devotional service. So we'll see that we actually, when we're engaging in devotional service, we're chanting every day, begging for service, and Krishna engages in service accordingly. If he's engaging us in services to do with looking after the deities, preaching, etc., then there's more Brahminical, we have to come to the realization doesn't matter at all. Krishna is just seeing where we're at and seeing how he can purify us so that we can actually come back to him. So we should be following the advice and the guidance of senior devotees who we trust and who are somewhat responsible, even maybe indirectly, for engaging us in service. They see our propensities, so they ask us to do this, to do this. And then we should be satisfied in that, knowing that we're doing this for the pleasure of ultimately of Krishna. But this is quite a vague answer. I'd perhaps like to hear your own realizations.
I think things become very, very clear when one starts doing japa. Because until then, I feel it's very on the theoretical platform. When one starts doing japa, then one can see and get to know himself more in and out. as a person and personality. And yes, then we have this Varnashrama Dharma system for purification and for, like say, evolution or furthermore realization. But ultimately, bhakti is what we want to perform, which is beyond Varnashrama system, which is way beyond Varnashrama system. And once we do japa, I think, then we can assess more in good devotee association. We can get to know what is our nature and what is our role of participation, duty and requirement. Ultimately, it is to become a devotee only. And like, as you mentioned, like in Kali Yuga in theory, or it's not very clean and clear, it's still okay. Oh yes, the Brahmana only is this only or that only. So we get some glimpses and some kind of the understanding of one's psychophysical nature. But ultimately it is to kind of become a devotee only and understand the essence of the teachings of Mahaprabhu, which is beyond Varnashrama Dharma. Otherwise, if I kind of figure it out, okay, yes, I'm actually a Kshatriya. But if I don't perform loving devotional service and I get up too hung up or caught up in Kshatriya activities, no, as a Kshatriya I should do, then I'm not sure if that would be kind of reaching us, helping us to come to our perfections.
Yeah, it's nice. As soon as we chant and we're asking for service, we get. Chanting's like, stilling all the mud that's been sort of ruffled up in the ocean, in the pond, but we can't see anything. It sort of calms down a bit and it's become more apparent. And you see as well, like devotee children, but it's more obvious, quite often you see. So you can just imagine once you have, many third generation, fourth generation devotee children, then it's becoming more and more distilled again.
Anyone else have any questions?
Is there any other questions?
Yes, the most important, what you highlighted, anything done for personal sense gratification is a cause of bondage. Arjuna's not fighting was also his personal agenda. I don't want to fight. And similar, like Prabhupada writes in the purport in 247 as well, on these lines, like to not fight is also like a sign of not detachment, it is a sign of attachment or something. Was not attached to not doing his duty, or Krishna consciousness makes it so simple that we should, whatever we should do it for the pleasure of Krishna. If we do it for the pleasure of Krishna, then it's great. It's transcendental, no sin involved, nothing, no reaction. Otherwise, whatever the highest charitable cause we may do in this world, still it has got a reaction attached to it.
Like we had the example, we can think we're very nice that we don't eat meat.
Yeah.
Even better than we don't even eat any dairy products. We're vegans, we're like this. But they're still eating living entities. The vegetables, some living entity. And there's karma involved there. But if you offer it to Krishna, then you get free. The only reason we don't eat meat is because Krishna doesn't want meat. Krishna won't accept it, we can't offer it to him. Yeah, Garuda eats meat. It's bona fide. Because his nature, it's birds, they have, big birds like that, they need fed. He eats elephants, no? Or snakes, maybe.
Snakes.
I'm afraid he can eat an elephant.
religion or question or get hypothetical. Young Arjuna, from the beginning, wanted to fight, not necessarily to be Krishna, but he has some sort of agenda to fight, and that may be more difficult or not as difficult to them. We talk a lot about Jyotirlinga, isn't it? Or the desires in Krishna consciousness. I don't know, I'm just kind of reflecting on this.
Well, Krishna says that Arjuna, he cannot help but fight. I think he says in the 18th chapter, actually, by your nature you'll be engaged. So Arjuna, because he's very, very compassionate. He's immensely intelligent. He's perfect. He knows all the principles of religion. He's a perfect gentleman. He's very, very compassionate. He sort of sees there's so much suffering here. So intellectually he's getting beyond his nature, which is like he's thinking, I'm just going to give it all up. But Krishna's telling him that no, because you have this particular nature, even you go to the Himalayas or something, still there'll be some propensity within inside of you to sort of, even if you're not violent, still rule over somehow. You just that sort of Ishwarya above. Somehow you're controlling, protecting. Maybe we see like Bharat Maharaj, he's protecting a deer. So, a little baby deer, he sees mother gives birth, mother is pregnant, then she gets attacked by some other animal. And she's so scared, she jumps and she dies, but she gives birth to the young deer. And although Bharat Maharaj, he was Kshatriya, Raja Rishi, saintly king, he's now given all up. He's very, very elevated devotee, but still there's that sort of controlling propensity, that protecting propensity. And therefore he looks after the deer, then he gets attachment, etc. So the case of Arjuna, then you're asking that if he wants to fight. So I guess that then if he's just wanting to fight as some sort of enjoying mentality, then it'd be a sign that his compassion, his intelligence aren't so high, and therefore he may be less receptive to hear Krishna's message. What would be your thoughts? So we see in Krishna consciousness, like Prabhupada is presenting the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita is for everybody. No matter where you are in your spiritual path, Bhagavad Gita is for you. It takes you from where you are and it brings you to the highest. But then at the same time, Prabhupada is trying to bring us all directly towards pure devotional service to Krishna. As simultaneously we hear about, prescribed duties, and so your prescribed duty is working, whether you're Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, but then also at the same time your prescribed duty currently is to be engaged in Harinam Sankirtan. This is the Yuga Dharma. And then your Varna becomes somewhat subsidiary. You have to be engaged in a way which you can sustain, which you can be satisfied, etc., according to how conditioned you are. But you have to be situated in the place where you can serve Harinam, you can serve the Sankirtan. We'll come on to that actually at the end. So we'll move on to the next verse. That's okay. There's no questions so far from. Okay. So this is verse 48. Sahajam karma kunteya sadusham apinachaje sarvaram vahido shena dumenagnir vivavrita. And maybe again we can ask someone to read. picture read last time. Maybe we put to read. You got it all? Yeah, you can see it.
Therefore, one should not give up the word of his nature is not effective, even if its word is full of power. Therefore, in conditioned life, all work is contaminated by the material modes of nature. Even if one is a Brahmana, he has to perform sacrifices in which animal kingdom is necessary. Similarly, the Kshatriya, or the pious enlightened, has to fight enemies he cannot tolerate. Similarly, a merchant, however pious he may be, must sometimes hide his pocket to stay in business, or he may sometimes have to do business on the black market. These things are necessary, one cannot avoid them. Similarly, even though a man is a Shudra serving a bad master, he has to carry out the order of the master, even though it should not be done. Despite these flaws, one should continue to carry out his prescribed duties, for they are born out of his own nature.
Very good stuff here. I find it interesting that when I read this, I remember when I was first reading it, saying, oh, especially the example of a Brahmin doing animal killing, a merchant going on the black market, and a Shudra serving a bad master, ordering things that shouldn't be done. And none of these need to be done. You know? Why you kill animals? You know? Why you go on black market? Someone tells you to do something that shouldn't be done? No, you have intelligence, you have free will. You know, the Nazis were ordered to execute children, but they were still punished, you know, because they should execute their intelligence. But I was thinking as well that in some sense we're just engaged in mundane morality. We can try and do it, as you say, for instance, we're serving some master and we get an instruction that is perhaps, you know, by our intelligence is wrong, is sinful. Then either there's a chance that we don't actually understand the fuller implications of the situation, but also, as we've held elsewhere from Bhagavad Gita, no matter what we do, there's still some sinful reaction. But the process is to do it in an attitude of service. We were hearing yesterday the pastime of Parashuram. You know, I find it very challenging actually. You know, I would explain this to non-devotees. Even I would explain it to myself. But Parashuram, he's what is forget all the details, but his father Jamadagni, he orders him to kill. He orders first all his brothers to kill his mother. The brothers say no, so he gets Parashuram and says, "Okay, kill your brothers and your mother." He says, "Okay," and he does it. And his father's so happy with him. Says, "What benediction do you want?" He says, "Well, I would like my brothers and my mother to come back, and for them not to have any memory of the incident." It's completely perplexing. You're like, this, you should not kill your mother or your brothers, or surely the instruction of the father is wrong. But you know, it's a higher principle is we simply do what's ever pleasing to Krishna, spiritual master, and this is what makes things right or wrong. And so, like for instance, if we've been told to serve under a certain person, our spiritual master or their representative told us, "Okay, you serve under this person, and this person is maybe they're giving you some instructions which are not so right," then yes, we should use our intelligence, but At the same time, we don't have to, if we're sincerely serving, we're trying to please our spiritual master by serving this person. So it becomes this tension of how much do you have to use your own independence and your own free will, and how much you just try and please by serving. It's like actually in book distribution. Like, okay, this Krishna conscious movement is going to inundate the entire world. And I'm going to go out today and I'm going to give out 12 books. Yeah, I'm going to work the entire day. I'm going to give out 12 books. I'm going to take over the entire world. Really? 12 books, you know? And some people, they're just going to throw them away. You know, think, is this? And so we can use our intelligence. Well, no, I'm going to do this program, I'm going to write. And all these things are also valid, but then in one sense, the higher principle is book distribution is somewhat unique because Prabhupada really, really liked it. You know? Because sometimes think, you know, why? Why Prabhupada so much on book distribution? And he just liked it. You do book distribution, it makes him happy. It's somewhat, but when Prabhupada's happy, then all good things come from that. There's somewhat, you know, you can see as someone going to argue the opposing side, they're probably also going to be right. But there's no black or white in Krishna consciousness. There's a whole big grey area. Yeah, because you come to the higher platform, Krishna's telling us, you know, Sarva Dharma Parityajya, that these previous aspects of our national dharma, etc., which he's outlined, he's actually saying, but you got to come beyond that, just do what's pleasing to me. You agree? Or?
I think the key thing is being authorized. It's not more about right or wrong or moral or immoral, good or bad. Being authorized, and of course, in that being authorized, Guru Sadhu Shastra will take like what is kind of we signing up to. If Guru tells us something which is beyond scriptural injunctions, then we try to understand. But then we have our limitation and we do not understand Shastra say everything. The best thing is like what we do, we are being authorized and it's all good. Then we are free from the result matter. Unless we are not authorized, it's not very pleasing. And we may be doing the right thing, but then it would be like whimsical or Krishna doesn't really like it, even if it's right. So what? Just like in societal settings as well, government person, some bureaucrat or administrative man, you might have done the right thing that, okay, there was floods and you went there and you gave them this money and all, but still you didn't take permission. Maybe I had a slight different view. Maybe I wanted you to go 10 minutes late or something. So when we do things being authorized, then it frees us altogether, it relieves us.
It's very difficult to get my head around. So I often just take parts of the Bhagavad Gita, just very little snippets, and we see we apply them. But yeah, very much struggle when we try and take a bigger picture of Krishna's actually giving away so much, which is not acting as he's instructing.
What I like how Prabhupada has given us is like, kept it very simple, Sambandha Vidya Prayojan. Like throughout the theme, Bhagavad Gita is love and serve Krishna. And then rest, everything will come, intelligence and what, everything will come. Do japa, associate with devotees, engage in service, rest will come. And human life is too short, Kali Yuga anyways, and so much of distraction. How much can we afford to study scriptures? How much can we afford to analyze what is right, what is wrong and all? Already on a daily basis, even though living in temples still, say how much surrendered am I and what is my consciousness level. So there's not much room for just like, okay, analyzing and thinking, and if I just follow and if I do things authorized, then it could be wrong or may not be wrong, right or wrong, then I become free out of it. Government also backs up. The police officer might have done something, but okay, fine. We wanted you to do or you were authorized and we'll look after you. It's okay. We'll look after the case.
Yeah, Prabhupada gives the example of this one soldier. You know, he's ordered to shoot. It's fine, even the person, if he's not. But then if someone just goes out and shoots someone, even if that person deserves to be shot. Yeah. Acting in the world is a very dangerous. You actually have to stay on. We have to constantly be engaged in devotional service. Our mentality has to always be in every single action we do. How can we please Krishna by this action? How can we please the spiritual master? How can we serve the devotees? And if it's not that, if that is not mentality in action, then we're simply engaged on a material platform. When we get some mercy, and we get some concession, I guess, because we're a mercy case. This movement is based upon mercy. And it seems like the further we get on in devotional service, the more pertinent it is that we develop that consciousness. Mamcha yoga vicharana bhakti yogena sevate. This is a verse, that's not a verse I'm thinking. I guess that one works as well. Saganansavatiteta, Buddha Bhavas Mangita. To engage in devotional service is beyond the modes of material nature, it's beyond this causality of good and bad, it's beyond cause and effect. But then we have to question it. What is devotional service? Like, okay, we offer our food to Krishna, it's free from all karma, it purifies us, it's prasadam, it's the Lord's mercy. But what is prasadam? You know, we cook nice things in a very clean kitchen. Brahmins cook nice things in a very clean kitchen and offer it to, you know, the deities are worshipped every single day. You know, there's offered with certain mantras. Of course, Krishna accepts this is prasadam. You know, we're at home, we've got some deities or picture, we cook it nicely, we offer, we say some mantras, also prasadam. But then we hit it down a step, you know, oh, okay, we're outside, so we've got no picture or anything, we're not clean, but we still offer it nicely, and then we get to a stage where we just Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu. Like, is it? I mean, I don't know the answer to these, but is it prasadam every step? If we're just thinking, I just really want to eat this, but I know I should offer it, then maybe Krishna purifies it. But it's not quite as potent as, like, you know, Mahaprasad from Jagannath Puri. And similar with devotional service, if our mentality is, okay, you know, I'm just living in this temple because it's a place to be, you know, I suffer out there, you know, it's something to do, I've got a place to live, I feel part of something. You know, how many people are joined Krishna conscious movement because of that? Now, it's fine enough, we can join for any reason whatsoever. I know I've got many not so pure reasons for joining, but how quickly can we come to a platform of actually thinking, how can every single, you know, activity, every thought, everything I do, my entire day be dedicated toward the pleasure of Krishna, towards the pleasure of my spiritual master? This is devotional service. Devotional service is a perfection. Devotional service is how to think and how constantly to be, in a complete attitude of gratitude that we'll be able to engage in this process. But if this is not there, then really, you know, we can go through the motions, but then it's not really devotional. It's not pure, and you see, it cannot last because, you know, the consciousness that, okay, you're cleaning the floor, but this is Krishna's floor. And this when we chant properly, we're begging to be engaged in devotional service. And therefore, when we're chanting with really hearing, because it probably doesn't emphasize so much, oh, you have to chant with this mood. Probably mean you just hear, call out, have some desperation. Just hear, because the mantra has all the meaning in it, in one sense. We're begging to be engaged in devotional service. We're being begging to be taken under the shelter of Srimati Radharani, who is Bhakti Devi herself. It's for her from whom devotional service emanates, and it's by her mercy that we get engaged in service. And so she also gives us the mentality. I know when I first started, I got the opportunity, the first time, when I first went to the manor, I've been reading the books and chanting for some time, and really, really excited. And the first I had to isolate, it was COVID. I went there and they would bring prasadam to the door. Blew my mind. I honoured that prasadam unlike I've honoured any prasadam since. And then when I got let out, then they were sort of trying to break you in easily. Just give you some light service. I remember, I still wish I had that mentality, like just some cleaning services. I was so grateful to be able to do it. I did it with so much love. And now I get some cleaning services. But on reflecting, that mentality itself comes by the mercy of Srimati Radharani, to think that I can do some service for Krishna, for Krishna's devotees. And she's only going to give this mentality if we're actually properly begging. And it's only if we have this mentality that our activities are actually devotional. And this is why we have to properly chant. Or else it's just mundane activity which cannot sustain us. Of course, but I guess linking back to what we're talking about, because it's a very elevated platform to be constantly thinking like this, then Varnashram Dharma is there. We get engaged in some activities. Say for instance, we like to have some leadership, some control of other people, some sense of importance, etc. Then, Krishna is very merciful, and perhaps this movement, there's an opportunity to take some management position, and then people respect you, you're in charge, you can order people around. Because, of course, within ISKCON, there's pure devotees who occupy this position simply to serve, because they know that's what's pleasing to Prabhupada. But for those of us, there's also people who are not pure devotees, perhaps. But Krishna knows, okay, I need to give them a certain activity which is going to satisfy them materially so that they'll stay and become purified so they can become on a platform where they're doing it simply out of devotion. And it doesn't matter what you do. It does not matter at all what you do. But until we come to this platform, it's important that we have service that is suitable to our nature. Any questions or comments? Go back to purport. That's okay. You can finish reading the. Just slow down.
A very nice example. Although fire is pure, there is still smoke. Yeah, smoke does not make the fire impure. Even though there is smoke in the fire, it's still considered to be glorious and all elements. If one prefers to give up the work of Kshatriya and take up the occupation of Brahmana, he is not assured that in the occupation of Brahmana there are no unpleasant teachings. One may then conclude that in the material world, no one can be completely free from the contamination of material nature. This example of fire and smoking very appropriate in this case. When in winter time one takes a stone from the fire, sometimes smoke disturbs the eyes and other parts of the body. But still one must make use of the fire despite disturbing the. Similarly, one should not give up its natural occupation because there are some disturbing elements. Rather, one should be determined to serve the Supreme Lord in his fire occupation and duty. That is the perfection of one. When a particular type of occupation is performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, all defects in that particular occupation are purified. When the results of work are purified, when connected with devotional service, one becomes perfect in seeing self within, and that is self-realization.
Nice. What's the read for me to before?
Was purpose are charming there. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so again, he's emphasizing no matter what we do, there's always going to be some fault, but it's inevitable. We can never do it perfectly. But then we just, if our mentality is doing it, the pleasure of Krishna, then it becomes purified. It becomes perfect to seeing the self within, and that is self-realization.
I suppose there are two sects of people, very extreme. One becomes so extreme, like, oh no, I won't eat too much. Why? Because it gives karma. I won't sleep too much. Why? It's karma. Taking it to one extreme altogether. And another sect, like karmis, proper karmis, well, everything is tainted and all, what much can we do? So let me just enjoy. And another is like bhog tyag, na? One is like completely engrossed in sense gratification, and another is like neti. No, this is binding. Give this up. But us Krishna conscious practitioners, we are neither too attached nor too detached. We are not like after any attachment or detachment. We are after just what pleases Krishna, what pleases Guru Garam. We go for it. Nothing like personal, and yet it becomes so personal. Nothing personal, but yet because the personality is there, personality stays, it becomes the ultimate personal objective, isn't it?
Because I guess this is still Krishna's summarizing karma yoga. As he said, but simultaneously it's bhakti. It's got a goal. I'm not sure how long we're going for.
Want to do maybe one more?
I should ask.
Okay, yeah. When we are sitting here.
Diksha, you like to do one more verse? Do you have any other questions or comments you'd like to share?
Diksha, any thoughts? Should we do next verse, or if you've got any question or anything, any comments?
No, we can go further.
Ashakta Buri Sarvatra Jitatma Vigataspriha Naishkamyasitam Paramam Sanyasen Adigachati. One who is self-controlled and unattached and who disregards all material enjoyment can obtain, by practice of renunciation, the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. Goodness. Oh, Prabhupada just goes straight at it. Real renunciation means that one should always think himself part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and therefore think that he has no right to enjoy the results of his work. Since he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, the results of his work must be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. This is actually Krishna consciousness. The person acting in Krishna consciousness is really a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life. By such a mentality, one is satisfied because he is actually acting for the Supreme. Thus, he is not attached to anything material. He becomes accustomed to not taking pleasure in anything beyond the transcendental happiness derived from the service of the Lord. Repeat. Thus, he is not attached to anything material. He becomes accustomed to not taking pleasure in anything beyond the transcendental happiness derived from the service of the Lord. A sannyasi is supposed to be free from the reactions of his past activities, but a person who is in Krishna consciousness automatically attains this perfection without even accepting the so-called order of renunciation. This state of mind is called Yoga Rudha, or the perfection state of yoga. As confirmed in the 3rd chapter, Yas Tvatma Ratirevashyat, one who is satisfied in himself, has no fear of any kind of reaction from his activity. I love this purport. When you read them, yeah, they keep changing.
Yeah.
But it's this mentality, one who is really renounced, they've actually, it's not they've reached some stage of, we think people become spiritually advanced. That's how we describe it. It's like we're here, they're spiritually advanced. All that's happened is that they've just become less covered by all these material designations. They're more aware of who they truly are. And so when we're factually just aware of reality, that we know that we're part and parcel of Krishna, then there's no conception of trying to enjoy the results of the activity. I brought the picture again. Okay, so previously we're engaged in karma yoga and we're running away from the fruits of activity. It's like I remember when I started offering arti, I think I was doing Tulsi arti. Okay, I'm offering incense. This is for the pleasure of Srimati Vrinda Devi, not for me. But I like the smell. Okay, I'll hold my nose. Because it's some attraction, but then you come, and then I realize it's stupid, you just do it for the pleasure. But it's like this, we're engaged, we're thinking, okay, how can I act without having just do a sense of duty, try to be model goodness. But then you come to a higher platform, realizing that everything's for Krishna's pleasure, either directly or indirectly. Krishna's the only, Bhakta Ramya Gita Prasad. Actually, he is the only enjoyer anyways. We're his parts and parcels. We cannot help but serve him. And naturally, we're not running away from the fruits of activities. We're simply, everything's for Krishna. And in this way, previously Arjuna asked, what's the difference between Tyag and Sannyas? This renunciation of stopping the activities or giving up the results. And Krishna here is described, or Prabhupada in the purport, he's basically synonymizing that because we have to act, but everything is done for Krishna's pleasure. There's another point in the purport. So he becomes accustomed to not taking pleasure in anything beyond the transcendental happiness derived from the service of the Lord. He becomes situated on this platform and the idea of trying to enjoy anything material is just this platform that comes by mercy. Prabhupada wanted us all to become sannyasis. We have to develop, or at least serve those who are sannyasis. Then we can. I wonder what they explaining. You see this picture of Mahavishnu. You see it like the cover of Bhagavatam, etc. The Mahavishnu is lying down in the causal ocean, but then he can see through to the spiritual world. He can see to the just like there's like a parting, especially in some of the older pictures. There's like a parting in the Mahatattva, the sort of material covering. Mahavishnu can sort of see through. They say, well, if you get close to Mahavishnu, then you can also see through that gap. And it's like this way. You just, Tadvadi Panipatina, Paripashna Sevaya. Jnanina Tapadarshana, the self-realized soul, they're seeing the truth directly. So you just stick as close to them as possible. And you can also see what they see. Okay, I think that's the same. Next time. So any final questions? Or?
No, it's very enlivening and very relishing, especially when we study Bhagavad Gita or Krishna conscious literature, say practicing Krishna consciousness, overall, be it chopping vegetables or reading Bhagavad Gita or cleaning together. But when we do it in association of devotees, it comes to life altogether. Comes all to life. And Prabhupada's purpose, like, how can we describe? They are like magic or charming, such enlivening purports. And over can be read over and over. His writing so authoritative, so commanding, so sweet, so sublime, so clear crystal, so real. Just if we need little bit of blessing and go more and more and more and more, want to read over and over again.
I just always notice is different devotees are different. They've got different natures. You find something that, because I know for me that it's just always, if I'm not associating with books, then everything's just a struggle. I can feel myself. It's like you're really hungry for something, but you don't know what it is, and you realize you've not been reading properly. And we can read. We can read to take points for class or something, some notes and these things, some verses to memorize, impress people. It is more in the word of passion. Just to read, to associate. We're associating with Prabhupada, we're associating with Krishna, we're associating with Vijayana, we're associating with Sri Vishnu, Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev, Vijayabhushan. We're associating with all these acharyas when we're reading. This is much more, you spend time with any advanced devotee, everything's, Even if we don't understand what it is, the topic of Prabhupada would say, devotees lecturing in Hindi, you say, you sit, listen, they don't speak Hindi. It's like they're just having that association. It's so purifying. I was reading just today, it was one memory of Prabhupada. Where is it Prabhupada's phrase? I wonder what he was asking. Prabhupada had I can't remember, I read things like this, I don't forget the details as such. But more just spending time with Prabhupada. Prabhupada had been looking after one devotee. They've been praying, they wanted to go back to France. They were doing all this translation work. Jyotirmai Mataji, doing lots of translation work for Prabhupada's books, but because she wasn't living in France, I think she was French, but she was living in LA in the BBT headquarters, and so she was losing all her ability to speak French because she was speaking with Americans every day, and also she had some other reasons she wanted to go there, family and etc. And so she's praying. Then she writes Prabhupada one letter about how to translate the Supreme Personality of Godhead into French. But then Prabhupada writes her a letter back, and he says also, he gives her an answer, and he says, I want you to go back to France to serve with the. And so she's asking, like, well, Prabhupada, how do you know what it is? How are you able to help the devotees? He says, the more that you're thinking of me, the more I'm thinking of you. The more that we're engaged in thoughts of the spiritual master, the more the spiritual master is. Krishna says, Majjita, Lakata Prana, that the thoughts of my pure devotees always dwell in me. And certainly the pure devotees are always thinking of Krishna. And then so if we get a pure devotee to think of us, then Krishna is going to end up thinking of us, because that's what's in the thoughts of the pure devotee. So we don't need to be scholarly, we don't need to be, like some pandit and learn everything, but just we have to be fully absorbed in the Shastra. And Prashant.
Yeah.
Okay. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Tagore Premanand.
HG Pancha Tattva Prabhu ki,
Nanta Koti Vaishnava ki.
Hare Krishna. Okay.